Welcome to another episode of Basagan Trip. I'm Leloy Claudio. I teach history at De La Salle University. As always, kung gusto nyo akong kausapin, may request kayo, gusto nyo akong i-troll at meron nga mga nagtutroll, pero masaya naman, you can always treat me at Leloy Claudio. So, for today, light tayo dahil magpapasko na at gusto ko rin magbigay ng Christmas gift dun sa mga ating viewers na estudyante, which is 5 writing tips for Filipino students writing their term papers in English. So, napaka-importante ito ngayon dahil yung iba sa atin nagsusulat ng term paper ngayon, yung mga ibang teacher nag-check ng term paper, and I think it's always important to revisit some of the basics of the English language when we write our term papers. So, just as a side note, ang tips ko po ay para sa English at hindi po para sa Filipino dahil I'm cognizant that a lot of students are writing their papers in English, and also ako mismo, mas magaling ako magsulat sa English kaysa sa Filipino. So, first writing tip, ito lagi nakakalimutan ng mga tao, use the active voice. Ano bang ibig sabihin when we use the active voice? Well, simply, it's not the passive voice. So, ano yung passive voice? Ito yung wasing and yung wearing. So, for example, I was hit. Rodrigo Duterte was elected. Wasing and wearing. What's the problem with this? When I say I was hit, it begs the question, who hit me? When I say Rodrigo Duterte was elected, it begs the question, who elected him? So yung active voice reintroduces yung doer of the action. So let's turn those sentences into active voice. I was hit, a car hit me. Active voice, alam na natin kung sino yung bumundol sa akin. Rodrigo Duterte was elected. The Filipino people elected Rodrigo Duterte. Alam na natin kung sino yung bumoto para sa kanya. Why is this very important? Because importante lagi pag nagsusulat tayo yung ebidensya, yung what, where, and when, and who did things. Kadalasan, ang gumagamit ng mga passive voice ay yung mga politiko na merong gustong itago. For example, kung ako si Martin Andanar at pinag-uusapan ko si Kian De Los Santos, ang sasabihin ko, Kian De Los Santos was killed. Hindi mo alam kung sino yung pumatay kay Kian De Los Santos, passive voice yun. A better way to phrase that, if you want to be honest and transparent, is the police killed Kian De Los Santos. And indeed, the police killed Kian De Los Santos. The second, do not confuse will and would, can and could. I'll tell you a story. Sa isang law school, isang big law school, one teacher said, Mr. Reyes, do you think you could read this chapter for me? Ang sabi ni Mr. Reyes, Sir, I would read that chapter for you. I would read that chapter for you. Sabi ng teacher, Mr. Reyes, you would read that chapter for me if what? Sabi ng estudyante, I would read that chapter for you. What's happening there? The teacher is using would correctly, the student is using would incorrectly because would and will cannot be interchanged. Will is if you're sure. So I will do that for you. Would is if there's a condition. So for example, I will read this chapter for you. I would read this chapter for you if you gave me a bonus in the quiz. The same thing with can and could. You can say, I can write in English. No ifs, no buts. But if you say, I could write in English, usually kailangan may if doon. I could write in English if you forced me to. So there's a condition. Now, I think the reason why Filipinos always confuse could and would, will and would, they like yung uncertainty ng would and ng could. They think it's more formal, they think it's more indirect. But the problem is, English is a direct language. So if you can use will, if you can use can, use these words. I'll give you an example from class. One student wrote a term paper for me, said, Marxism in the Philippines could be described as Maoist. Ang sagot ko sa estudyante ko, could be described as Maoist if what? Sabi ko, the better way to phrase that is, Marxism in the Philippines can be described as Maoist, or better yet, Marxism in the Philippines is Maoist. The simpler, the better. The third piece of advice, quit it with the adverbs. Sobrang dami natin gumamit ng adverbs. Adverbs are the Lee words. Literally, basically, realistically. I would literally do that. I would basically do that. I would realistically do that. Now, most of the time, these Lee words, they don't really help. So, for example, I literally got mad last night. What does that even mean? Just say, I got mad last night, and it doesn't detract from the content of the sentence. Usually, panggulo lang yung mga adverbs. So be very sparing with your adverbs. One piece of advice that I give my students is Control-Alt-F, search ly, and then titignan niyo yung buong document mo, makikita mo lahat ng words na may li, and you can remove the adverbs from your compositions, and it usually streamlines the process. So, Control-Alt-F, search for ly, remove the adverbs if you can. Pang-apat, huwag tayong sobrang obsessed with transition words. Yung mga ibang estudyante ko kung magsulat, every sentence may however, or in particular, or therefore, or yung pinakaayaw ko, yung with this, comma. For example, meron akong isang estudyante, sabi niya, Jose Rizal was a great Filipino. With this, he changed the trajectory of Philippine history. Bakit pa kailangan yung with this? Unang-una, with this is not a transition that even exists. It just isn't there. Pangalawa, the sentence would have worked without it. Like, Jose Rizal was a great Filipino. He changed the course of Philippine history kahit walang transition. It's okay. Sometimes, the best writing you would have learned is the writing that your kindergarten teacher taught you. Because some of the best sentences are written in kindergarten because they're direct, they're very simple. For example, I got up this morning, I ate breakfast, diba? Walang transition, sobrang linis, sobrang simple and sparse ng words. And that's what good writing is. Simple and sparse and transparent. So quit it with too many transitions. If one idea flows from the other, because of the logic of these particular ideas, you don't have to point towards that flow by inserting unnecessary transitions like however, furthermore, with this, etc., etc. Finally, and this is not so much advice, but it's more like encouragement. The final thing I want to say is love the English language. Marami sa atin, nagtatagalog, nagtataglish, sa tingin nila foreign language yung English, kaya hirap na hirap sila, ayaw nila magsulat sa English. Pero one of our most important writers, whom I think should be a national artist, si Mr. Gregorio Brillantes, for his entire career, has insisted that Philippine English is a language of the Philippines. Kasi kung iisipin naman natin, for example, yung Kastila, it is a Mexican language even if it came from Spain. It is a Peruvian language even if it came from Spain. So even if English came from the UK and came to us via America, we've indigenized this particular English. In fact, there are many researches already showing that the way we speak English here in the Philippines is distinct from the way English is spoken in other countries. And also, don't forget that we have contributed a lot to the English language ourselves. For example, if you look at dictionaries, there is a word called boondock, which comes from the Tagalog bundok. So English has influenced us, but we've also influenced the English language. And I must say, Filipino is a beautiful language, but English is a beautiful language too. For example, fascinating ang English because it has elements of Germanic languages, but it also has elements of Norman French. And my favorite trivia to my students is, in English, why is it that you have a different word for the cow that is in the farm and the beef that you eat, the pig that is in the farm, and the pork that you eat? Bakit nga ba? And this goes to yung very interesting history ng English language. In the farm, the people who were raising the cows in the farm were English speakers. But the people who were eating the pork were the French speakers, so pork comes from France. Same thing with the cow. The people in the farm were English speakers, but the royalty in England after the Norman invasion, the French speakers were eating boeuf or beef. So there's a different word for the pork that you eat, and the pig that's in the farm, and that comes from itong varied history of the English language. So the history of English language is that nobody has actually really owned it. So some parts are French, some parts are English, and because of words like bundok, some parts are even Tagalog. And so there is such a thing as Philippine English. It's a beautiful language. It's not denying na meron rin tayong other languages in the Philippines, but English is one of those languages. Huwag matakot gumamit ng Ingles. It is your language too. You can own it, and it's a great language. So maraming salamat. I hope you enjoyed those particular tips. If you have further questions, again, you can just tweet me. And I really encourage you to use these particular tips next time you write your term paper. And I encourage teachers also to encourage their students to write English in a sparse and transparent way. Hindi yung parang English ng politiko, kundi yung English ng taong gusto makipag-communicate sa kapwa niya tao at kapwa niya Pilipino. Maraming salamat po.